Hello everyone, thank you for being here to discuss the Community-Based Needs Assessment. This assessment provides a snapshot overview of key health indicators in the West End neighborhood of Providence, Rhode Island. The state of Rhode Island is the smallest state of all the United States and is home to only about 1 million people. This profile will look at a multitude of health issues in the state in order to provide a resource for ultimate change in the community. It has been determined that, of the multitude of health issues, Providence, Rhode Island has a significant issue in regards to heart disease. Providence, Rhode Island is a lively population of businesses, art galleries, and historic universities. The community of interest is the West End neighborhood, and of the 24 neighborhoods in Providence, the West End is the highest total population at 16,260 people. The West End's population is highest in young adults at 22 to 39 and children 0 to 17, with a slightly higher prevalence of males. The majority of the population in the West End is Hispanic at 51.4%, followed by Black at 17.3%, which is closely followed by Asian 13.8% and whites at 13.4%. The average household income for the Hispanics of the West End is $23,800 in comparison to non-Hispanic whites in the community whose average household income is $53,200. Only about 8% of the population in the West End earns six-figure incomes versus other neighborhoods in Providence, where as much as 50% of the population earns six-figure incomes. The primary objective of this assessment is to analyze the West End neighborhood of Providence, Rhode Island. By summarizing two models, it was possible to decide which logic model had the best utility for the needs assessment. The two models that were summarized are the Map-It logic model and the Precede-Proceed logic model. However, out of the two of them, the Map-It model seemed most comprehensive. All stages of the Map-It model would be preference for this community. The stakeholders who care for this community about the health of the residents will need to be mobilized. In order to assess the community, the assessment will pinpoint those health issues in the neighborhood with the greatest need for intervention. The plan of this approach will be carefully executed with vision of the community goals for the community based on interviews and surveys. Finally, the implement phase will show steps of action in an effort to see differences in the community. One of those differences start to unfold, it will be important to track the progress over time. So we see here two sides of the park, one being a low income and one being a higher income. So due to personal proximity to the community, a windshield survey was able to be completed every day for a week at 3:30 in the afternoon. This is a very active time for the community, especially during nice weather. A windshield survey is a visual assessment of the community as it's conducted through a windshield. Exactly what it sounds like. Through an assessment, a surveyor is able to make observations about a community being studied. And so what I observed were the homes surrounding the park are in excellent condition on one side and subpar condition on the other. And you can see by those photos. The demographics of the community during this brief observation seem to be majority underrepresented populations. This includes Hispanic, Latino, Asian, and African American. Children of all ages were represented from infant to adolescent, and the adults present were young adult to middle age or of similar ethnicity. The majority of the population in the West End is Hispanic, as we said, followed by Black, which is closely followed by Asian and white. When compared to the whole city of Providence, the racial breakdown is as follows. So Caucasian is actually opposite, the exact same as Hispanic in the West End at 51.4%, African American at 15.89%, Asian at 6.54%. And those who identified with Hispanic or Latino origin make up 41.7% of the population, so still a high number compared to Providence. So the West End's population's youngest in adults and children, so 22 to 39 and 0 to 17, with a slightly higher prevalence of males. The West End neighborhood is home to over 5,000 youth under the age of 18. In comparison to the whole city of Providence, the age distributions are comparable, with age groups showing similarly, the greatest range showing in the 18 to 24 category. In terms of educational attainment for the West End residents, 47.1% have less than a high school education. Providence, Rhode Island has a number of social determinants that have great effects on the community and the community's health. Crime is generally considered an issue amongst many urban communities. However, as shown in this figure, the West End's neighborhood has significantly more crime than the city and state national average at 44,600 per 100,000 people, 3,522 per 100,000 people, 2,138 per 100,000 people, and 2,837 per 100,000 people, respectively. So crime can have major effects on the quality of life and length of life for a person living amongst it. For example, it's estimated that the total crime reported, 751 crimes were committed in the West End alone, and that's in Providence. Yet again, the crime statistic is significantly higher in the city, state, and national estimates at 575, 239, and 386, respectively. In terms of health insurance coverage, further social determinants of urban Rhode Island include disparities in physical and recreational opportunities, health insurance coverages, linguistic needs of patients, and homelessness. So due to an urban setting, this community's residents mainly live in high-rise apartment buildings or tenement homes, usually 3 families. Therefore, access to a yard is difficult. Further, there are 3 green spaces in the West End neighborhood. The Dexter Street Park is the largest, however, not the cleanest or safest for children at play. And then again, in terms of health insurance, approximately 90% of adults in Rhode Island have health insurance. Those who are part of a minority racial and ethnic group have much lower rates at 75.2% insured. Fortunately, this insurance rate for children in the state are decently high, however, should be much closer to 100%. Heart disease is the #1 killer in Rhode Island amongst all populations and all demographics. The Hispanic community over 50 years old is disproportionately affected by this health issue. In fact, each year, approximately 7 out of 10 deaths among Americans are from chronic diseases, of which heart disease, cancer, and stroke equate to more than 50% of all yearly deaths. Amongst Rhode Island residents, approximately 14.3% of those who are 50 years and older have heart disease. When adjusted for age, Hispanics have higher risk of developing heart disease when compared to whites of the same age. Currently, in the West End of Providence, there aren't really any formal existing community assets or resources to address the health issues of heart disease. There is a high prevalence of fast food restaurants and not as many healthy food options, which can increase the risk of high cholesterol and obesity. Further, the low socioeconomic class and status of this community would not necessarily allow a family to choose the healthier option, even if it were to be available for them. However, this community does have a farmer's market every Thursday afternoon in one of the bigger parks in the neighborhood. This is an opportunity for residents of the neighborhood to actually sell their food from their personal gardens. These further increase community dynamic, which in turn may increase overall health and attitudes. Further, this community does not have its own formal recreational league. However, there is pickup sports leagues for both adults and children, and those again are held in the park. And there's kickball, volleyball, and some baseball in the spring. Psychosocial and social engagement is important for communities and for individuals themselves. Although higher economic status may lead to better health, social support systems have been known to impact health as well. Especially in Hispanic communities, greater support from family, friends, and the community contributes to better health and better health outcomes. So I'd like to thank you all for being here today and listening to this presentation and community assessment, and I hope you learned something.